Welcome to episode 4 of the ML4Patents.com webinar series. As you can hear, the session is being recorded. A link will be sent to all of the registrants at the conclusion of the webinar. Actually, we'll be sending that tomorrow. We wait one day to send that link. Before I begin the formal presentation and introduce you to our panelists, I'd like to walk you through some of the features of the software. You can see the control panel typically on your right. All participants are muted on entry. If there are any problems at all with the software, please use the questions field on the side of the screen. We'll try to help out with any technical difficulties or questions. I'd also like to encourage everyone to ask presenters questions, and you can do so using that same question field at the side of the screen in the control panel. Please feel free to use this throughout the webinar. I will be monitoring the question field throughout, and as it seems appropriate, as we're moving from section to section, I may stop us to go ahead and get a few of those questions answered. And then, of course, there'll be time remaining at the end for asking any questions that anybody might have had that we didn't get through during the time that we were, as the presentation was being given. So my name is Tony Trippi. I'm the founder of ML4Patents.com and managing director of Patent Informatics. I'm joined today by Barry Brager and Yong Tang from Perception Partners. They're going to be talking to us about their Intellar solution for creating dashboards and doing a really exceptional job of organizing data, especially really large collections of data, which I think is really the strong point of this platform, is its ability to deal with very large collections of a variety of different types of information and make sense of all of it and visualize it. And so with that, I will turn it over to Barry to get us started.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks all to who are taking the time to join us this morning, and friends, family, colleagues, clients, and new friends. I also want to thank Yang, my colleague, who's helped make this organization of information possible. But together, he and I are going to try to walk you through what are we doing in AI for R&D, IP, and M&A. And to start us off, what is Intellar? It's our solution for machine learning and artificial intelligence. But when it started, we didn't call it that. It's really an expert system trained with all the knowledge we've collected over the years in providing consulting and expert services work across all technology-centric and technology-intensive industries. Intellar leverages natural language processing and fuzzy logic. It tolerates ambiguity in a way that we can help business people in the IP function, the R&D function, and the mergers and acquisition functions at companies or in other organizations work together to see their own insights. And for more than 15 years, we've brought this solution to bear, first by trying to automate a few steps, then by taking captured knowledge and applying to it, then slowly and systematically bringing in knowledge across all types of who is doing what, when, and where. And when you bring that together, you can answer some pretty big questions in business. And the 6 questions you see over to the right of the Intellar logo reflect the kinds of things today this expert system is trying to address, and it's constructing dashboards and data sets in a clean and curated way so that others can then browse the data on their own, reach their own conclusions. And the AI that they use isn't nearly as such heavy lifting as the AI that we use to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of what's under this and how we got here on what we have now. So to do this case study today, we represent the role of a publisher, if you will, but we're publishing results, curated a report like a searcher would do to their client for many years, or an internal group would do for their stakeholders, either senior level or outside an organization. So Tony's our user today, if you will. He's given us the case, and what he asked for is, well, what can you talk about in quantum computing? Can you build on a gold standard data set that was built for qubit generation and other types of technologies in the area? And we wanted to do a different spin, so we focused on blockchain, which is an area we watch a lot. It's a very big data set. Actually, quantum is quite an emerging area, but the data is smaller if you will, than something like blockchain, which is massive and has tons of buzz as well as IP and a lot of discussion around the world. So Tony, with our user in mind, is going to sort of benefit from this Intellar process. And again, it is a process. It's a way of learning what a user needs to create their own personal gold standard data set. And then Intellar takes on starts to understand that so that the publisher can meet their needs.
Yeah, the publisher here is listen to users' needs and create a data curation strategy to meet users' goal, such as partner identification, technology scouting, financial investment, and business development.
So once we understand, okay, I want this, I don't want that, I'm interested in this technology or these industries, or I'm up against the clock on this regulatory event, or I want to look at these competitors or what they're doing. Once there's that high level question, most users don't know what a good result looks like. They kind of know what they don't want, but they really don't know yet what they're supposed to have. So we've got to go get the data. And to do that, we're understanding that, the need will evolve over time. The more we see, the more we'll say, oh, no, none of that. Oh, more of this. And so we have to develop search strategies to collect information, but still keep people in the loop as knowledge evolves over time.
So then the publisher's role here is continuously looking for and gather new information across any global IP, technical literature, news, deals, litigation information, clinical trials, and more.
Now, once we collect this information by any means from any source and bring it together, we've got to structure it. And what Intellar's AI is uniquely doing is creating an intelligent solution to structure any data. So it's not just patent classes or categories that in patents, if you will. We have to classify a news article or a piece of technical literature or a clinical trial in the same category as what the patent's talking about. So we can see how much commercial activity is associated with how much development activity, which is where it can be most instructive for our users. So by adding this structure, we can help them quantify and screen the data, but most importantly, it's explainable. We're using rules, transparent, auditable, explainable rules where we can talk about how something got into a bucket or a category and how we might get more or less of that, and we can tune it to create really that model of business reality that our users want.
So then we, as a publisher, we need to add structures to the data by running customized or standard taxonomy. So as Barry mentioned, not only the technology can be categorized, the company can be categorized based on their industrial sectors. We also categorize business events by using standard taxonomy that people readily understand, such as a deal, a funding, or maybe even product release.
So we are structuring the topics on the technology side. We're structuring the topics on the event side. We're structuring the organizational relationships so that users can just browse that structure. They still get to experience the big data. They still get to experience making their own analytics, creating their own stories, their point of view, and most importantly, they don't have to tell us everything they really want to know. They only help them by creating that unified data set where enough insights and enough options are available to them from the facts so that they can share it internally or externally and make decisions and act. Because at the end of the day, our users don't want a data set, they don't want a search, they don't want a taxonomy, they want answers.
Yeah, so we as a publisher deliver Intellar dashboard report by sending emails to our subscribers. The data can be updated every week, every month, or at any frequency you choose. So the user can browse the content to get through the big data set quickly. They can perform deep dive to find the best record in the tool. They can tag and create what we call favorites, which continuously learn over the time. They also can share what they learn by adding comments, by adding votes, or they can even export report from Intellar.
So with this sort of structure, this point of view of the user, and then this point of view of the report results publisher, we are going to take our quantum blockchain study forward another step. Our general question today is, where can we play? What's going on? You know, who are the folks that we know that are in there, and what's new and interesting? We've collected IP information, patents and applications, technical literature, news, deals, press releases, many other types of documents to create this curated set to browse live with Tony and with you. And we'll categorize technologies, events, and sectors and try to make use of those to explain how we do it and show how we create some custom categories, what we call favorites, that the user can tag a group or make save a chunk, if you will, and then build this out into a dashboard set that can facilitate more discussion here between us and ultimately between those who are trying to learn.
So Barry, one quick thing before we move on. It occurred to me as we've been talking over the last couple of days, and I think I know the answer to this. I mean, you basically said this, but what would be your response if a user said, well, we also have some internal documents. We have some either research reports from our people, various other types of proprietary data, for lack of a better term. It's very, very clear that you're coming across that generally speaking, you're not creating a storage platform per se. You're creating a dashboard and a means by which to get solutions and answers from the data, as opposed to having to worry about storing all that raw data themselves. But if they did in fact want to incorporate a little bit of their own material that might be proprietary, what would your response be to that?
Typically, it's sure. Let's take a look at how it's structured. We can import any record-based data to go along with these items. We typically consider it a type of literature, if you will, from the client, depending on what it is, but from invention disclosures, which we've brought in, or results from other people searching. So there's a talented patent search team at our client. Most of our clients have active groups of researchers. We take that research and can incorporate it either in a labeled way where it's easy to quickly click and grab so-and-so's chunk of data, or it can be in an unlabeled way where it's in as unbiased a manner as possible, integrated into the broader landscape with to see where things fall. But any text-based record data, we are typically sure we can do that. And we are often able to incorporate it and display it homogenously with all this other information, so people can get a sense of what they have and where it falls in the landscape.
And that's an outstanding point, and clearly an area of differentiation. People have struggled for quite some time. I've even worked with a few other organizations. The idea of trying to bring together the non-patent literature, the patent literature, the financial information, all of these disparate sources is a really huge challenge. And I know you're going to talk to us a little bit more about the special sauce, the hard work that you guys are doing in the background to make sense of those different sources, because they often don't correlate with one another easily. So this is great. Let's keep rolling.
Great, thank you. We'll do. And I'm going to keep talking to your point, even though I'm going to change the slide. So the first thing we're doing is bringing in all kinds of stuff to begin with, except it's not for anyone else's use but us. We are that back of the house, right? So we started by we said, okay, we're going to do a blockchain meets quantum case study for this presentation. They're two big, huge, complicated technical fields. And the quantum field has its own vocabulary. I mean, flux and Josephson junctions and resonators and the Hamiltonian. I mean, there's just a whole different, vocabulary. And there are some big words and there's some four-letter words. And in our business, the shorter the word, the harder it is to search for in context. And so, but we input that Wikipedia article, that seminal white paper, your internal document, the key presentation, whatever that is, and we break that up into phrases and words and parts of speech and try to understand what's happening in an expert point of view. We have been, talented PhDs who worked with us over the years. Jan is a PhD, and collectively we work together to try to, experts, understanding what do we make of this? Do we need to ask more questions? What else do we need to look up? And we get our arms around, okay, what is the vocabulary? What is the structure of the relationships? And how can we build a search strategy that gets this, that doesn't go too big, but as you mentioned earlier, Tony, we're not afraid of that big data. We actually can handle it quite well. So we're willing to overshoot. We're willing to get more than we need at the beginning of the process so that we can then hone in. It's kind of what we call sliding down a funnel to get to the most important information. But since most of our clients are at the fuzzy front end, that wide end of the funnel to start, what we do is we're willing to go a little bit wider, get bigger data, and get them down slowly, but they don't have to see it until we've made a little bit of a mess behind the scenes. So the first step here was understand the Qubit gold standard set, which Tony provided us. These are key top significant concepts from the positive examples, meaning there were examples that stood for qubit generation in Tony's gold standard set. There were things that stood for this is not qubit generation. We took the positive examples, learned from it, said let's find more like it, but not just in patents. Patents, technical literature, news, PR deals, all of that. And that's where we started in this case study. Now, we can bring in any data you and we have the rights to. And some data we already have the rights to, and some data you have the rights to, and your contractors can do it for searches and for curation. So we can bring in the data you're already paying for. And this is really important because the best data is expensive if you want it already curated or collated. Other things, they're not. It can be obtained from open sources, from great institutions and patent authorities and the like, but it does have to be organized. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is find those patents, which this green color will become important. It's always the same in our tool. When you see this green, it means a patent. We're going to find those patent applications, always in gold. We're going to find that technical literature, that regulatory information, which we'll always display in violet. And we're going to find news and PR and deals and blogs and tech posts and other things that we can get. We're going to display that in orange. So we're always looking for data to answer the questions. We do have some favorite data sources, but we're always willing to bring in more. And it's not just your internal data, it's really your subscription, so long as you have the rights to mine it and we have the rights to mine it. And we work that out with our clients on a case-by-case basis. When this data comes together, we start to build that search. So we kind of have a story. We're trying to get you an email. We're trying to get you an update that comes out every month. But what we really want to do is come up with rules that do it behind the scenes. So first it comes to us every month, and then we clean and curate and organize it according to a strategy we've agreed to, and then we bring it to you. Jan, you want to add some color to this process here? I'll put up the sort of a background and we talk to it.
Sure. Yeah, to elaborate what Barry mentioned. So the first thing we do after understanding the user's goal is creating search alert. We develop a stacks of search logics across multiple data sources, and we bring the data in a unified form on the schedules. The user do not have to run their own search. The publisher will notify the user once the updated information is ready. The user can explore their result within Intellar.
I will say if our clients have a search strategy they favor, or like with Tony, he had said, here's a class that's important for quantum computing, we'll get it. You'll notice these queries are Boolean. They don't have to be. Any trick in the book. Somebody's got an AI platform. Perception Partners was lucky to be a mentor on what's known as the PQAI platform. We can go bring in AI-based search. We can do similarity searching. We can do family searching, citation-based, any trick. But it's less interesting to show that here to understand that at a glance, because you can see a long list of publication numbers. For example, if we were doing a family search or a citation search, you wouldn't see that, or we would be writing it through an API to a patent search platform that gave a parent number or a base number, and then the platform would be using its logic to go retrieve all the family members of the citations. But ultimately, depending on the platform we use, we are bringing this in on a schedule according to logic of any type, and any other tool, including the great tools that have been in this webinar episode series before us and those to come. We're willing and lucky and fortunate enough to use or to try, and we can incorporate anything, because the search for most of our clients is just the beginning. So to get all this organized, we have to classify or categorize it. A lot of tools today and a lot of entities today are working to come up with special ways to organize information that make classification routine. Either they train a classifier or they build synonym lists, and we've hybridized that, if you will. Our most important thing is that we show multiple taxonomies in dashboards. So one taxonomy will be just yours. It'll be just the way you see the world. We're mapping the rest of the world to your point of view. In other cases, it's a standard taxonomy. We're always looking for these types of positive and negative business events, as Yang mentioned, deals and M&A, but we're also looking for hacks and attacks, firings, risks, rumors, and so we're looking for things that some of them are very difficult to categorize, and that's an understatement. So we can't just rely on machine learning classifiers, which often can take a day or more to train just in one category. It's very computationally expensive. So we favor rules. And what it says here, explainable, repeatable logic, but really it's a rule base. And we over the years, we have built many taxonomies, thousands of them. And there's millions of rules, from a single synonym to all types of patterns that define a concept. And we basically can drag and drop rule chunks or rules around to create a new structure. And the rules can be, this is a regular expression is what you're looking at here. The rules can be fuzzy patterns, they can be Booleans, or they can be vectors. They can also be code. The rule can be JavaScript, or the rule can be programming. The rule can be a formula. So when we're looking for temperature ranges or a pH range, or we're looking for an amount of Bitcoin, or we're looking for a currency, you need the exact name of that currency. We're looking for Libra and Libra coin, for example. We're not looking for this Libra, that Libra. Libra is the word, and so it's got to be that, or it's not acceptable in most cases. So sometimes you don't need a lot of sizzle on the classifier. You need a lot of precision, and you need a lot of exclusive logic. Things, it's not this, it's not that, a lot of negative training. So what you're seeing here is kind of a screenshot from a back end that we use to build a project when we're organizing information by taking chunks of rules that may have been built in the past and tweaking and modifying them to create a special rule. And we can drill down. I know the font's tiny here on the screen, but this is a rule that's either a patent class, or it's a phrase, or it's a regular expression, or it's another phrase. We can aim these rules. The rules can be aimed at just a certain type of document, or it could be aimed at, it doesn't have to be aimed at all. It could go across all documents. For a patent class, I might want to aim it at patents only, or I might not have to worry about aiming it. Many other documents won't describe a full, multi-digit hierarchical patent class. That code would only show up in a patent in many cases, based on the way we collect and curate the data. So sometimes the rules are very strict. Other times the rules are open, but the data set is strict. And by handling all this behind the scenes, our clients don't have to worry about how they have to do it. They worry about what's been done. The first question most clients ask is, what have you missed? The second question they tend to ask is, what'd you find? And from that, we're often judged. But when these rules are added, structure appears in our tools. And so what happens is that behind the scenes is this monochromatic, dense, technical interface of organizing information. But there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. Inside the software, the dashboards that get published of the curated final results, we have events and technologies. Some of the events are standard taxonomy. We're looking for the same things all the time. Technologies, we're looking for custom view of the world in areas and categories. And then there's an invisible third level, which are these rules. And then ultimately they become things you can click, filters. You can just add and subtract from to create a stack of data. And when you have this structure, this tree, if you will, it can also be displayed as what we call a sunburst. And so inside the software and inside the deliverables, we're basically taking this classification effort, adding this structure, and displaying it as trees, displaying it as sunbursts, or displaying it as filters, all of which can be clicked and browsed, and all of that tied to the data we've collected color-coded by type, green for patent, gold for application, violet for literature, orange for news. Stop here and welcome questions, either embellishment from Yang or questions from Tony.
Yeah, a couple of comments, like Barry said, categorization of topic is essential to what we do here. So basically, Intellar uses explainable rules to add structure to the data. You know, we call this entire process is explainable AI. And you know, we use millions of rules like keyword classes, regular expressions, and all the rule is stored in a hierarchical form. And when we put these rules all together, it allows us to add structures to the data to create filters in the front end of the tool. So then the user can just click and then find the record they care about. So I mean, it's very powerful to visualize records to identify technology trend like white space and create a strategy insight from the result.
I think this sort of approach is really underrated because it's so difficult to do normally. I mean, I've been associated with a number of organizations that have created taxonomies of this type or created hierarchies of this type. And once the hard work is actually done, that it's actually built, then of course you've got the second hard job of keeping it populated. And then the third hard job of actually disseminating it. And as difficult and as high as the barrier of activation is to any one of those, the idea that you try to get over that barrier of activation for all three combined is pretty daunting. And what you're providing here, though, is a way to get over that hump and to get to a place where a lot of insight is just flowing. As a matter of fact, the way that I typically think about doing this, the way I set these sort of things up for my clients from time to time, just has to do with the fact that there are materials involved. For instance, there might be processes involved, and there might be actual final forms. I mean, some of the clients I work for are consumer packaged good companies. And so that's the way they sort of think about hierarchies like this. And I can imagine doing that with this and really getting some deep insight into all the materials, all the mechanisms by which they're putting those materials together, and then being able to zoom out even a little bit to look at those product forms. And so what you put together here, I think makes a ton of sense and can save organizations an enormous amount of time, because it's just so terribly difficult to try and set this up without any assistance whatsoever.
Well, I appreciate you noticing. This all started as ways to automate, you know, the back end of a consultancy productizing its services. And so we got the back end right, you know, before we ever really had a front end to work with, because we had all this knowledge disappearing. You know, there's really a knowledge management system that is, has over the years evolved to basically manage conflict, so it can continue to handle more and more and more rules and manage the collision of those rules, which is an inherent weakness or burden of any expert system. And then the rest of it's programming to make inferences from this knowledge base and to apply these in a way that they are auditable. Why did this hit? Why is this missing? Can we add this? How'd you get here? Is this also there? Did you get this as well? I mean, those are the typical questions before somebody will believe what they are being handed in terms of, oh, this is how many things there are, or this is all there is. You know, that's the key. But once you can trust, this is it. Now, you know, oh, that's a white space. That's a gap. You know, there's room for me. There's room for us. We can play here. And ultimately, that's what a lot of companies are trying to understand in these emerging areas like blockchain and quantum. What's left? You know, what's out there? You know, it's been around for a while. What now? What? And that's where being able to sanity check ourselves, not just have, you know, a client get an answer they need, is important to be able to say, yep, we are confident you can do this, and then we can put our money where our mouth is. So when you get these bucketed, tagged, categorized, whatever you want to call it, records in this structure, yeah, you can make some pretty pictures with it. and you can start to count things in a trusted way that makes sense. And so I've got a couple slides here that now move from the back end to the front end, and then my plan is to talk about that, then move to something live. Mindful of time, again, we just have, we could try to make sure we have room for questions. But ultimately, when I show my curated result set, if you will, on a front end to a client, now I'm in my user view. So I'll just hop back one quick. Right before we were in purple zone, we were in the publisher view. Now I'm in the orange zone. I'm in the user view, and so now I'm in the front end. That's I'm looking at, in this example, I've got 108,000 records that I'm looking at, a big one, but I've only got 8 up on my screen at the moment. Okay, I voted for them, by the way. I'll explain about that, but there's a little thumbs up here. You can click a record and just click the thumbs up, and 8 out of 108,000 things just pops up. It's pretty straightforward. I actually run a search in the tool here, so the tool has search, but you're not searching everything in the world. You're searching 108,000 curated things in a very efficient way. There's more than one type of search in the tool. This is a natural language search. You can just start typing, or a few simple operators for and or not, like Booleans, and some other fascinating things like same sentence, same paragraph, stuff like that. But you can also search by regular expression in here if I pick this drop down, which will allow me to look for numerical patterns or particular name strings and things like that. That could be fuzzy, but across some different boundaries. Now, when I send this result to somebody, I'm passing them a citation, really. A bibliometric abstract in a collapsible interface. So here I've kind of clicked this button and I've opened my menu. So here these are closed, here these are open. I'm just kind of going back and forth. And so I'm looking at the same stuff and just exposing kind of where my hits are, which show up here in bright green. And here's one piece, here's a patent application in gold, here's a piece of technical literature in violet, here's a piece of news in orange, here's a second piece of news that's also in orange. You can't see the box below. And then here are categories. The very same categories we showed as a tree, as a sunburst, and as a set of filters, which by the way are here, but also they're at labels. In this case, the area is just represented by a color, and then the category that's under the area is represented by a tag. And the user can get a sense of kind of what is this thing and what's it about and where do we get it from. And sometimes we have a lot of information, sometimes we don't. I mean, we don't know the authoring organization of a piece of news sometimes. Otherwise, times it's just Bloomberg. So we are extracting unstructured information from the news. We're trying to figure out who the subject companies or entities are in it. That's another piece of AI. And that's a little different than rules because that's called entity extraction, but we do that too. And so we take these categories and take these document types and take these articles and bring them to that user so that they can explore them again in this collapsible interface with clicks. Click, 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 click. I want to see any one of this, any one of that, this and this, or this or that, and or reset, try it again. And this is kind of the experience we provide. So there's still, again, some other AI, if you will, some machine learning underneath of this. And we're just going to go through with Yang and just talk to you about a few of these things that are hiding under here to better appreciate the rules give it structure, the approach gets the data, but how do we begin to bring value through clicks as opposed to typing and querying and deep exploration? How do you get in and out of a giant data set quickly with the knowledge you want so that the gurus and the experts on the team trust the results, and that casual user that I just want a chart, can I get some slides? I need to know this too person can come in the same place, because this is a team deliverable. This is for teams, and so not everybody's the same expertise. Clicking is the way for teams to explore complicated data on an equal level. So to do it, you've got to have the data well prepared, and I'll just talk about a couple other things we prepare. For example, links. When you click the title of one of these records or the publication number, we're taking you to the best version of the record online. Sometimes you don't have the right to the data set I use to get the information. I'm allowed to share a citation or an abstract, but that's it. Or I don't have it because that's all Medline published, for example. And so what we can do is we can take you to the place you download, or access the data most often. So you can click this link and we will build behind the scenes a Derwent link or a Questel link or an Ethnography link, all trusted, wonderful, great sources, and different entities subscribe to services from these companies. And so we can find a patent in our copy of the patent data, and we can send you to the detailed information on the patent in your copy of the patent data, for example. And it can be an open data set like a SPOSnet or Google Patents, that's free, that anyone can use, or it could be a deep data set like Derwent or Questel, or not others like Ethnography, where it's got value-added data. We are extracting names, as I mentioned, from the text. In a patent, the name's handed to you. It's already structured into a field. In other cases, it's not. But we create rules that we learn over time as we investigate stuff. That this company, for example, ID Quantique, could also be known as IDQ. Mathieu Legray is the lead inventor, and it might be under his name. Chemin, and I'll murder the name here, but Chemin de la Marguerite is the address, and that might be associated with their attorney or agent on a patent. And this whole company is a spin out of the University of Geneva. And in some cases, we would have learned that if it's the University of Geneva and it's a patent and it's about the subject matter and it's during a certain time period, then that also should be ID Quantique's assignment. And so we will put that on. We will organize that for them. So we're learning as we go, dialoguing with our clients, and then applying those rules in context. Likewise, I already kind of showed this, if you will, topics. We have synonyms that are direct synonyms, that are suggestive synonyms, and these can be scored before we decide to keep them. TF-IDF, NLP, all these different types of approaches have scoring. TF-IDF is known as term frequency and verse document frequency. It's a way of ranking concepts. It's one of many, many ways to do it. Actually, the search engine we use here ranks relevance based on a document corpus. So sometimes these terms are included because they're relevance ranked, sometimes they're included because they're direct synonyms. But we are constantly looking at how to make sure you find what you want, even though you didn't type the exact thing, that means that. The categories are also important. We talked about technology categories, but like an event category, we actually tag anything that talks about the future. So if it talks about next week, next month, next year, down the road, is it foreseen, is it forthcoming, or in the course of time in the cards, these idioms, really intent. We capture intent, and then we map the intent to the topic. So future concepts is a label that looks for what's coming, trends. And we're grabbing that by intent. And finally, we're grabbing things by pattern. So we're going through the unstructured text in some cases and figuring out this is an amount of money that's been mentioned, and it's associated with a fundraise. Now, we work with fundraising databases and data sources, but we also pull that data out. So if somebody has raised that amount of money, been acquired for that amount of money, they sold something for that amount of money, we're tracking amounts of money, and we're tracking that action verb, that relationship that goes with it, and bringing that together. Let me stop here for a moment and get Yang or Tony's feedback or questions.
Yeah, just quick comments on Barry's side. So basically what we show here is how the publisher perform data wrangling to improve the data quality and data integrity. So if you are a data scientist, you will know that data wrangling is not easy at all. It's tedious, it's time consuming, can take up 70 or 80% of time. So we, as a publisher, we perform data aggregation by bringing data from different sources. We normalize the entity by using the parent company subsidiary relationship. We add structure to the data by the categorization of technology, industry sectors, or even the business events. So by doing all of this, so what we hope is to provide the user a clean and enriched data set that they can trust. So the user can perform data analysis and find strategic insight in the tool just with a few clicks. And
let me ask a few of the questions that have come in. The first one I think you covered, but I want to give you an opportunity to address it. So not free, non-patent literature content, which is not licensed, by the client may be important for a project. How would that be covered in the system? I mean, is there any scraping that you guys do for material that they make available? You mentioned PubMed. That might be something like that. So, and then there's one other question that I'll ask after that one.
Sure. So again, we get the copy. First of all, we get the data in our copy of it. PubMed is free, but the full text is not in a lot of cases. But actually, maybe 30% of the articles that are full text on PubMed are also on what's known as PubMed Central, and there is a free copy of the full text out there. Actually, behind the scenes, once there's an approved list of records in a data set, we automatically go to PubMed Central and download the full text and bring it in to the system. And so actually, I'm switching to a live version of this. I'm going to keep answering your questions, Tony, okay? But I'm just going to show what we do, because we also use Google if we can't find it. So here's an example. We probably don't have the full text for this article, right? In this example, here's not PubMed. But with PubMed, we will try to find the full text. Otherwise, they will have to buy it. But we can either, we work with companies with what's called their libraries or information centers. Oftentimes, they have a subscription hiding in the company somewhere if it's that important to them. Not always, but sometimes. And so we use what's called link resolvers, which work to set up cookies, if you will, that let this system use that contract to click our link and resolve it to their link of their copy. So we work very hard behind the scenes to make sure that our data links to what they have the rights for. In other cases, I don't have the full text of this document here, but what happens is when you click it, what it does is it actually runs a Google search on it. Now, this is at archive.org. We could have pulled this down, actually. This should be free, but maybe not. Maybe it's abstracted here from Springer. But what Intellar does is it actually tries to guess the link from a paid source, and if it can, it will generate a Google search from a click, and then let that user be one click away, typically, from the full text of whatever that thing is. It still may not get them the PDF they want, but most of the time it does. So hopefully I'm touching on the answer you were seeking there, Tony.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. The second question that came in, and I think it's particularly relevant. And again, you've touched on it to a degree, but this is more specific, about trust. And the question is there any provision in software where data collected and related information is cross-checked? And they say, for example, if data is coming from another database, then that data could potentially be false, whereas actual and true data is available elsewhere from like a patent office site. So is there any ability or is there a possibility for being able to cross-check different data sources and come up with a best response or best answer based on this cross-referencing?
Well, funny you mentioned that. So actually the patent records always link to at least two data sources. So here, the title will go to a Google search on that patent, but the publication number will go to a Derwent page on that patent. So we let people, when we get a record in context that we appreciate and want to know more about, that's the moment we have to check it. Unfortunately, checking it at scale really does not happen well, but we can move very quickly with the patent data. There's actually a third link here. This is a full text link. So a user can request the record from us. If we already had the full text, there'd be a blue underline under it, and they could click it and just pull it down. That would be within a rights managed environment. But there's 3 ways to get more information about any record that is learned in context in Intellar. And just one more point I want to make. I'm actually going to refresh this whole page, but fake news. I mean, this question seemed to be patent based, but the reality is that, how do we deal with, here's Bitcoin and blockchain and distributed computing and quantum news. How do you decide that these news articles are in any way the best version? News is very repetitive, so we work very hard to get the best version of an article, but articles on Bitcoin movement clog these types of searches. So trying to understand what's fake news is also an issue. So we do have some tricks. We look for misspellings and syntax and other things like that, but ultimately, once something is found, it needs to be validated.
Okay. That's it for the questions for now. I mean, we'll have more time. Please continue to post your questions in the question section of the control panel. But you're going to go ahead and give us a live demo, I think, right?
Well, we're kind of in it, right? I mean, I'll just show our categories, right? So I mean, I just want to explain, right, that these categories can be browsed interactively, and one can kind of zoom in on a topic, and whenever then they can kind of see the colors here and kind of what's going on, or they can screen it. So this is everything in Qubit. What's the newest stuff in Qubit? You know, so we can drag it and review it together. I'll let this build while we go forward. There we go. Okay. So it kind of will slice the data to just the things we want, and kind of get at it. So then we can click through and say, okay, here are patents that mention qubits that are in the set. So we quickly cut the 34 things out of 108,000, and it carried all our filters over. So instead of having to click in a records view, we can discover something in another visualization and then drill down. And so I can look at these pictures, large or small. I can kind of browse through stuff. This is set up to be friendly to browse, right? It's a data feed, and as you can see from these pictures, right, it's mind-boggling. You know what's going on. It also helps to have native Mandarin on your team. So the value of what Yang and others bring to the table is just immense, right? I mean, so much of emerging technologies coming from China. You really have to understand some of these things in Mandarin, or again, we machine translate these things into English to appreciate it. But yeah, the qubit chunk of the blockchain data set, especially that most of which is coming from China, it is vast. And actually, I'll talk about that now by looking at a landscape map. So landscaping is a very important part of what we do. And these maps inside the tool bring together all the companies that we're studying by all the technologies or other things that are in our taxonomies. And so inside of Intellar, any set of entities with companies in this case, but also what's known as favorites, which are tagged groups of records you care about and you gave a name to, and sectors, which are corporate entities, those making 10 billion or more, focused on a particular industry and the like, can be crossed, those would be the rows, with columns with either our technology taxonomy or event taxonomy. And so you can just look at how many deals they've done, how many clinical trials they have, and things like that. Right now I'm in the technical taxonomy, and by example, I'm sorted. So I have 1,000 companies that I made a favorite ahead of time, which I call qubit or quantum. It's really anything in the qubit category or anything in the quantum category, and I gave it a name. And now I've just got my whole 108,000 record view map filtered by that. And so then I've sorted it by who's leading in quantum computing to kind of make a picture. If I can, that's just sort high to low. I could sort it low to high, or I could unsort it and go back to just everybody who's in the set. And so these maps are very powerful. They show everybody all at once with everything they're doing by every type of document they're providing. And then all that has drill down. So this is Shenzhen Polytech. So if I wanted to know, well, what are the, they have 2 patents, 4 applications, and 13 literature articles in quantum computing, and I can see them across the entire landscape, right? One click, and I won't dwell on this, but it opens up that records view and drills down to just those records so I can see it. So you can look at the entire satellite view of a landscape and then quickly get down to the microscope view of the landscape as needed. And when we talk with Tony ahead of time, who's been just awesome at facilitating, helping us stay on track. He helped us say, well, we're the big guys, we're gals, we're the leaders. And so he wanted me to make sure I pointed out that, you can very quickly, in Intellar, identify folks by how much money they've raised, how much they've been acquired for, what their revenue is. And so here I'm just sorting on the largest earners, if you will, and actually they have among the smallest portfolios in quantum and blockchain. So, I mean, here's Alphabet, if you will, with just a few records in the set, right? 7 records total here that meet this criteria. And it's not the same. Big revenue, big brand, but quantum and blockchain, not a big focus right now for many of these big players. But some folks who are big in both blockchain and quantum, like IBM, they're certainly here and certainly standing out. I have one more display I'll put up, but of course I want to make sure we answer questions, and Jan has any other feedback, I want to get it, but I'm just going to hop now to a picture of the companies, right? So we're looking at this landscape view. I showed everything drilling down to the records view. And another case, I showed browsing in the categories view. There is an organization view in Intellar that kind of profiles every company automatically. And these profiles, right now, this is the same sort of screen, if you will. I've got the qubit or quantum favorite on. I've got my bigger companies. And what Intellar does is it's showing, in this case, each company by their output over time. If you click on any of these colors, you'll see, drill down to those records, and the sectors they're in, which are industry groupings we've made or those that are standard in space. And the tiles expand and collapse. So actually, there's a fairly sophisticated profile that's built for every company, and that's all filterable too. I could click here and only see the patent estates for just those entities. And it's going to shift the order because now State Grid has more patents than anyone else, Wells Fargo second, etc. I'll uncheck that to go back to what we were looking at. So I'm going to collapse these and just open IBM to just walk through the anatomy. But I can see records over time. If I click here, this will take me to the IBM website. If I click here, it'll take me to a website called craft.co that has profiles on the company financially. This will show me activity by location. These are their top inventors or co-authors. They're not mentioned with anyone else in this context. This is their full taxonomy. If I click on it, I'll make a big one. It'll show me this in the way we saw it before, nice and large. And these are magic words. These are important concepts, not popular, important, that are extracted. So in the IBM portfolio, these are the key quantum and blockchain concepts that stand out. And yes, here's Ginny Romedy, right? Here's her first name and last name from the news. This is unique to IBM. No one else is talking about Ginny Romedy like IBM is. So the ability to get at this information is pretty powerful, and then you can mark it up. So users can have a conversation about what's being said or add something in at any time to save their research in context. And the more recent comments go to the top. We are able to browse this in such a way where we can learn. And when we're ready, we can build a slide deck. So maybe we want to take this information about IBM and share it with our colleagues, one click. And this will build slides from the data and create a story that we can then keep some of or all of. It's temporary. I can close this and it's gone. But there's a whole set of relationships that were in that tile that we're not necessarily looking at that are pulled out here with a subhead, a footer, and I can export this all in my company branding. I do that by grabbing the things I like and moving it to a composer called My Slides, which allows me to build the story any way I want. I'm going to stop here for a minute and make sure there's no other questions as we round to the top of the hour. I want to thank everybody for sticking around and asking thoughtful questions.
Yeah, everyone's been fantastic. The vast majority of the people who signed in with us at the top of the hour are still here. We do have one question. I also had a comment about the fact that they don't necessarily seem like they have much overlap, but it is pretty amazing that the idea of blockchain and quantum computing, there is quite a bit of software related items, and you know, certainly recognizing that and then some of the titles that came up. Yeah, I think there's a big concern about whether a quantum computer might be able to crack a blockchain, for instance, and various other related items. And so I just really appreciate the fact that you combine them to talk about it, because there are some interesting overlaps, even though it looks like they're pretty disparate, or you would think there wouldn't be much overlap. In fact, there actually is. So the question that I have here is, and I think this is a fascinating question. We haven't touched on anything like this yet. Could relevant content from social media be captured? And the social media part I think is interesting to start with, but then perhaps even more, could you provide or use something like the Ultrametrics system for the included non-patent literature content in this case to identify technology leaders, for instance? And so, you know, various other data sources that might say, well, hey, not only is this person talked about, but they are a thought leader. Based on this you know, sort of objective score.
You can engagement and followers and fans and things like that are also relevant metrics for social, which aren't quite here in if you will, as clicks, but we set them up. So for example, you know, citations, right? So for example, here's every patent application with 10 or more citations in our set. So one click and we kind of have the highest ones. We actually import patent scores from other providers. We don't generate the score. We'll use whatever score you trust. But that's also here too. So if somebody wanted to find only things, and by the way, there's really no high scoring patent quality records in blockchain and quantum at the moment. And I think the algorithms have work to do. That's often an issue because you have to be commercial, litigating and making money, you know, and a lot of people doing it for the algorithm to want to rate you highly the way they seem to work now. But what I can say is that this certainly can bring in social data. They would be one record per. And again, whatever images or content can come in with it. I get into this all in Mandarin because that's just where the leadership is. But at the end of the day, yeah, any type of metric can be tracked, and a social hit is a record. We just have to have the rights to the data. But when I showed my data tray earlier in the presentation, I actually had a logo there for GNIP. I mean, which is Twitter data. So we can bring in that data, and it can be brought in like anything else and tracked. And if that influencer is also an author, and that influencer author is also an inventor, you would see that trend for that name.
Well, guys, we're at 12:58, and again, the audience has stuck around. Been some very good questions, and you guys have done a fantastic job going through this material. Fascinating system. Clearly, a tremendous amount of work has gone into the development over a very long time, and I can't thank you enough for joining us today. So please, as you're closing down the webinar, there is a survey. Please just take a few minutes to give us some feedback, and if you've got questions, additional questions that you'd like to be addressed offline. And again, I can't thank everybody enough for joining us. Can't thank the presenters enough for joining us. And we're going to call it a day. Thank you so much.
Tony, thank you for this opportunity. Jan, thank you so much for your leadership here in getting this set together, making sure we had something clear and reliable to present and trusted. Thanks to all for joining us.
Thank you, audience.
Bye-bye.
All right.